On this report, Joseph W. Brady has invited these Spring Valley Lake community leaders to explain the importance of upcoming meetings in developing a plan to purchase Spring Valley Lake Country Club.
Terry, Spring Valley Lake is 51 years old, and I'm honored to have two really good friends here. Brian Hurst, who I've known forever, one of the top residential agents within the high desert region with First Team. David Greiner, who's the owner of the local Greiner GMC Buick dealership. Brian has really taken the lead for the association as vice president of the association in the acquisition of Spring Valley Country Club. Next week, there are 3 meetings that are going to be chaired by Frank Vane, who is one of the country's, if not top, golf consultant, who has worked in 2,500 golf communities across the country. Some absolutely top-rated, deals. The board very smartly 2 or 3 months ago hired him to come on in to facilitate this. So you've got a board that Brian sits on as vice president with Brian Bickert and Alfred Logan, the general manager, and Bill Scott, and some great members. And you're trying to formalize a plan in Spring Valley Lake. It's got 4,215 lots, 93% built out, 10,000 plus people, and there's all kinds of rumors out there. So I've heard rumors about this is the plan and this is how much money. I just went through last night. I looked at 264 Facebook messages that have been posted on the community page. And we have obviously some very concerned citizens and residents and owners in here, but they don't have the plan.
To me, the most important fact is that no decisions have been made and no decisions will be made without community input. So if you've heard that there's a plan or someone has inside information, I would strongly challenge you to show up to the meetings, because this is the point where the board's asking for feedback.
But I can tell you, Terry, that for me personally, and I think that I can speak for the rest of the board, but I'm going to speak for myself first and foremost, what I want to do is only what the community wants us to do. So we're listening to them on this is what we want. And this kind of thing does raise emotions. One particular person that I read in the Facebook feed said something about his anxiety about the situation. And that kind of clued me in. I'm like, okay, you and I both have a lot of anxiety about the situation with the golf course, because we know if the thing were ever to fail, how detrimental it would be, not only to us personally, but to all of our community. And one of my really good friends, Bobby Tarango, who's over at Chicago Title, said the ripple effect in our whole valley will be it'll be palpable.
This is the only private country club from Ontario to Las Vegas.
It would be, so the worst case scenario is what we absolutely want to avoid, but we're looking at it from a lens of a different understanding as opposed to somebody else who in their mind, at least at first pass, the worst case scenario is any increase in dues at all to them and their bottom line and their cash flow. And we try to be sensitive to that. So I thought, well, okay, so their anxiety, they're feeling the same kind of anxiety because of the unknown, and they are not privy to all of the information, and so they're left to fill in the spaces with conjecture, or they're left to fill in the spaces with the rumor mill. And then you end up in a path where with the issue that's at hand is very much distorted and skewed based on misinformation and rumors and innuendo.
One of the issues, and this was brought about by Robert Reed, who was the prior treasurer last year, if we're going to borrow some money to purchase the country club, which is a purchase price of $2 million, and we're going to refinance the water at $3 million and change, why don't we look at some other assets? So a community pool, an Olympic-sized pool, the skate park. So the list became kind of this big list, and as Brian and I have had some pretty serious conversations. I love him to death. He's a brother. He's a pastor. We both believe deeply in God. I passed on to him these rumors that we've all heard out there, and candidly, part of the video tonight is to say to people, be sure, be sure, be sure. No excuse. You got 3 days. Tuesday is going to be at 2 o'clock for those people. If you can go to the 2 o'clock and not be at the 6:30, it kind of helps the commuters. But you've got one of the country's absolutely top consultants in Frank Vane. I cannot tell you how pleased I am that the association hired him, that's going to help us create the plan.
I've been fortunate enough to kind of listen and watch from a distance at how things are progressing, and Frank Vane has made it incredibly clear that this board is not to make any action until they get this community feedback. So the most important part of these informational meetings, because ultimately the feedback that the board gets from this community is the direction that they're going to go with the plans.
Once we get to this place where we present a plan, we're going to invite every homeowner to review the plan in its entirety with every detail, and then provide feedback and tell us, this is what we like, this is what we don't like, do this, don't do this. And then with Frank's coaching, use that information to actually bring a proposal to the community that we know the community is behind and will support.
It's a Terry, it's a multi-step process. So, they've been working on the plan, and they brought in Frank Vane, who has done this. So we have some very unique issues here.
There are two things that are unavoidable. One is the water loan, which I believe the balloon payment's due in 24. Is that correct? If I'm not mistaken. And there's no way around that. We have to address it. So if that's to refinance it or if it's to pay it off, we're going to have to deal with it one way or another. And then the second issue is that the two parcels that the country club sits on are not included in the property description for our HOA. And so they're not subject to our CC&Rs, and Club Corp, for whatever reason, has determined that they're going to sell it. And for anybody that may think, well, maybe they're not really going to sell it, that they've threatened to sell properties before, 1,000% they are going to sell it. They're going to sell the property. So the issue is, if we don't buy it, somebody else will. And there are other players contending for the property. And so then the issue is, whoever owns the property can do whatever they want to with the property, and there's nothing any of us can say about it. So they could keep it as a golf course and maybe not run it properly and the golf course suffers, or they could repurpose it and maybe try to rezone it for housing. And people that say that can't be done, it's being done all over Southern California. People say, well, we'll fight it and we'll block it at the county level and keep them from getting permits, but these developers have deep pockets and they'll wait you out for 10 years and let the golf course go brown. That's happened in other places. If any of those scenarios were to take place, it would be to the detriment of our community. And as David has reminded me in our bylaws, our purpose as a board is to protect the interest of Spring Valley Lake and keep it the most desirable place to live. Obviously, if our golf course goes brown, that really is to the detriment of our lifestyle for all of us, not just people on the golf course.
If this deal does not go through, and this golf course right behind us gets in the wrong hands, I will guarantee you, as much as he'll guarantee you, that we'll see a 30% reduction in values within Spring Valley.
And anybody that would think through this would, if you were to argue these points about the lake, it would be a no-brainer. Right? Nobody would say, if you drain the lake, it won't hurt us. Yes, it would. It would kill us all. And the golf course is equally as important. So we're going to have to face these two issues. We have to act on it. So then it's just a matter of, how do we achieve our objectives?
So, gosh, I mean, if you were concerned, or if you're a person that has reservations, or you want to see certain things implemented in the plan, these meetings next week are imperative.